He sold over 100 million records, stood beside Elvis and Sinatra, and ignited stages with such raw energy that women fainted in droves. But behind the glitter, leather pants, and million-dollar contracts lived a man crushed by guilt, haunted by scandal, and utterly broken by love. When Tom Jones's wife of nearly 60 years, Linda, lay dying, she made him promise something that would keep him alive, but also slowly destroy him. This is not just the story of a music legend. This is a story of love, betrayal, resilience, and a heartbreaking vow that Tom Jones still carries with him every single day. Tom Jones entered the world as Thomas Jones Woodward on June 7, 1940, in the small Welsh town of Pontypridd, South Wales, during the dark days of World War II. His father, Thomas, was a coal miner, a dangerous, backbreaking job in the Rhondda Valley mines where explosions and cave-ins were part of daily life. His mother, Frida, did everything she could to stretch their limited income, heating their home with a single coal fire and dressing Tom in patched hand-me-downs. The town echoed with the sounds of clanging metal and coal trains, but also the sweet, soaring music of Welsh choirs. Pontypridd was a place built on hard labor and held together by deep community bonds. Men descended into the earth before dawn and emerged at dusk with faces blackened by coal dust, while women kept the hearth warm, raised children, and often worked second jobs to survive. But every Sunday, no matter how battered the week had left them, the townspeople dressed in their best and walked together to chapel. There, they lifted their voices in powerful harmony, hymns that shook the walls and stirred the soul. Music wasn't just entertainment. It was a form of healing, of resistance. In a world that offered little comfort, singing was a reminder of beauty, of togetherness, of something greater than struggle. And in the middle of all that stood a small boy named Tommy Woodward, just 5 years old, with a voice that seemed impossibly large for his tiny frame. In church, he didn't just sing, he soared. The congregation would pause, turning their heads in surprise. Some whispered, others smiled, as the child's voice rang out, rich, emotional, and untrained, yet utterly mesmerizing. His mother, Frida, noticed it first. She knew this was no ordinary talent. Though the family had barely enough money for shoes without holes, she would tuck away spare coins to buy him secondhand records. Sometimes, she'd take the bus with Tom to nearby towns so he could perform in local talent shows. Tom would clutch her hand nervously before stepping onto those rickety stages, but the moment he opened his mouth, he transformed. Singing wasn't just a gift, it was an escape, a way out of the coal-stained streets and the weight of poverty. It was a glimpse of another world, one where he didn't have to shovel bricks or watch his father come home with bloodied knuckles and hollow eyes. Music was his golden thread to a brighter future, and the church was where that thread first began to unravel, pulling him, slowly but surely, toward destiny. Even as a child, Tom's voice stopped people in their tracks. He sang in the church choir, and adults would pause to listen, stunned by the power and emotion in that tiny frame. But school was another matter. Tom struggled with what we now know was dyslexia. Teachers dismissed him as lazy, and he felt frustrated and lost. But music understood him. He would tune into the BBC late at night and absorb the sounds of American blues, gospel, and rock. The voices of Mahalia Jackson, Little Richard, and Elvis Presley weren't just entertainment, they were lifelines. Tom listened, mimicked, and slowly built a voice entirely his own. Then at 12, disaster struck. Tuberculosis shut Tom off from the world for nearly 2 years. Locked in a small room, too contagious to touch or play with friends, his only escape was music. His parents bought him a record player, and he sang along to American records with such emotion that the walls of his room vibrated. That isolation, that pain, shaped the raw power in his voice that would one day electrify millions. There was one light during those dark days of illness: Linda Trenchard, a local girl who passed by his window and waved. They began exchanging notes through friends. Even separated by glass, they built a connection that would last a lifetime. At 16, Tom left school for good. He had no qualifications, no plan, just charm and a hunger for more. He took jobs hauling bricks, working in glove factories, selling vacuums door to door. And in 1957, at just 16, he married Linda. She was pregnant, and in those days, marriage was mandatory. Their son, Mark, was born a month later. Tom was a teenage dad in a judgmental, working-class town, desperate to provide and more desperate to sing. With a baby to feed and bills that didn't care about dreams, he worked whatever jobs he could find. One day he was carrying bricks on a building site, the next he was selling vacuum cleaners door to door. But none of it felt like living. Only when he stepped onto a makeshift stage, in front of a microphone and a few pints worth of rowdy strangers, did he feel like himself. Tom sang wherever he could, smoky pubs, dusty dance halls, and the echoing, beer-soaked walls of working men's clubs. These were not glamorous places. He performed through clouds of cigarette smoke and over the din of clinking glasses, with hecklers in the back and fights breaking out mid-song. But he didn't care. Every note he belted out was a rebellion against the life he was born into, a declaration that he was meant for something bigger. By 1963, everything began to shift. He joined a local band called Tommy Scott and the Senators, filling in after the previous lead singer vanished without notice. The transformation was immediate. The band, once just another pub act, suddenly had a spark, his spark. Tom's presence on stage was electrifying. He didn't just sing songs, he attacked them. He would stomp the floor, whip his microphone cord like a lasso, and hit notes so fierce they made glasses shake. His voice was volcanic, equal parts gospel grit and rock and roll swagger. Soon, their gigs drew standing-room-only crowds. In South Wales, they became legends, known for shows that left audiences gasping. Yet despite their local fame, breaking into the London music scene was like trying to climb Everest in steel-toe boots. Still, they pushed forward one gig at a time. Then one night, in a tiny club thick with sweat and beer fumes, fate walked through the door. Gordon Mills, a London-based manager who, like Tom, was born in South Wales, happened to be in the audience. The moment he heard that voice, he knew he had stumbled upon lightning in a bottle. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. London music manager Gordon Mills, also from Wales, heard Tom perform and instantly knew he had found a star. Mills gave him a new name, Tom Jones, inspired by the hit film, and moved him to London. But his first single, Chills and Fever, flopped. Tom was devastated. Linda took factory shifts to keep them afloat. They were on the brink of giving up until one final chance came, a demo of a song meant for another artist. That song was It's Not Unusual. Released in February 1965, it exploded. By March, it hit #1 in the UK and cracked the top 10 in America. Tom Jones went from bricklayer to international sensation, virtually overnight. 1965 was the year Tom became not just a star, but a global icon. He sang the theme songs for 2 major films, What's New Pussycat and Thunderball, the James Bond film. His performance of Thunderball was so intense, he fainted after holding the final note. Then came Las Vegas. In 1967, he became the king of the strip. Crowds filled the Flamingo night after night. Women threw underwear, screamed his name, and passed out just from seeing him perform in tight leather pants and open shirts dripping with sweat. At his peak, he made $100,000 a week, equivalent to over $1 million today. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra, and even Elvis recorded Green Green Grass of Home after hearing Tom sing it. But behind the glitz came the darkness. Tom claimed he slept with up to 250 women a year. His charisma on stage turned into betrayal offstage. His wife, Linda, who had stood by him through poverty, now suffered in silence. Headlines screamed of affairs, none more destructive than his fling with Marjorie Wallace, the first American Miss World. Photos of them kissing cost her the crown, her fiancé, and nearly her life after an overdose. There were others. Cassandra Peterson, who later became Elvira, said her night with Tom, when she was only 17, was a nightmare. Famous lovers like Mary Wilson of the Supremes and Charlotte Laws filled the tabloids. Linda withdrew. She became a recluse in their LA mansion. Broken by betrayal, she disappeared from the spotlight while Tom stood in it brighter than ever. In 1987, another scandal would come to haunt Tom for decades. While on tour in New York, he had a brief affair with 24-year-old model Catherine Berkery. She became pregnant. When she reached out, his team cruelly responded, "That's showbiz, darling. Do what you have to do." Her son, Jonathan, was born in 1988. Tom denied him, for over 20 years. In 1989, a court-ordered DNA test confirmed Tom was the father. The judge, Judith Scheindlin, who would later become Judge Judy, ruled in Catherine's favor. Tom paid child support but offered no love, no contact, no acknowledgement. In interviews, Tom said he had only one son, Mark. Jonathan, meanwhile, grew up rejected and heartbroken. In 2018, he was homeless and begged publicly, "I'm not after his money. I just want to know him." Tom never answered. Despite the personal scandals, Tom kept reinventing himself. In 1988, his cover of Kiss with Art of Noise brought him a younger audience. In 1999, his album Reload featured duets with stars like Van Morrison and Robbie Williams, selling over 4 million copies. That same year, he was awarded an OBE, and in 2006, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. The coal miner's son had become Sir Tom Jones. In 2012, at 71, Tom Jones stepped into a new role as a judge on The Voice UK. Seated beside younger stars half his age, Tom instantly won over a new generation. Contestants and viewers alike were drawn to his warmth, his wit, and the lived-in wisdom of a man who had weathered both roaring success and private storms. He wasn't just a legend on the panel. He was a mentor, often moved to tears by raw talent that reminded him of where he once stood decades ago, with everything still to prove. But then came 2016. The call came like a punch to the chest. Linda, his childhood sweetheart, the girl who had smiled up at his window when he was quarantined with tuberculosis, the woman who had stood by him through decades of fame and scandal, was dying. Diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, her time was short. Tom immediately canceled his world tour and flew from Asia straight to Los Angeles. Nothing else mattered now. At Cedars-Sinai Hospital, he stayed by her side, holding her hand, trying to be strong. But inside, he was unraveling. The woman he had loved since he was a boy, the only person who had truly known the real him, was slipping away. During her final days, Linda showed a quiet, almost supernatural calm. While Tom and their son Mark broke down in tears, she offered them strength. Her final request was simple and impossible. "Don't fall with me." Those 4 words became a sacred vow. Tom kept it, but it came at a cost. After Linda died on April 10, 2016, Tom entered a fog of grief so heavy it nearly crushed him. He couldn't sleep, couldn't sing, couldn't face the world. He would wake up reaching for her and remember she was gone. He spoke to her photographs, kept her clothes untouched in the closet. For months, her scent still lingered in the air, and he couldn't bear to let it fade. Friends urged him to rest, to retire, but a therapist gave it to him straight. "If you don't carry on, you will die." And so, with a shattered heart and tears in his throat, Tom stepped back onto the stage, not to perform for others, but to survive himself. Tom was shattered. He couldn't sleep, couldn't get out of bed. He started talking to Linda's photos every night. He kept her clothes and perfumes untouched. Even years later, he says, "I see her. I hear her voice. I talk to her every night." Therapists told him, "If you don't keep going, you will die." So he sang. He recorded "I Won't Crumble With You If You Fall," inspired by Linda's final words. He sold their mansion, every chair, every piece of furniture, and returned to London as Linda had always wanted. But the loneliness never left. His health began to fail. Hip replacements in 2017 and 2022 forced him to sit during shows. In 2022, he collapsed on stage in Budapest. Still, he refused to retire. In 2023, at age 85, he performed over 50 shows. The applause keeps him alive. The silence reminds him of Linda. Tom Jones, Sir Tom Jones, is more than a music legend. He's the coal miner's son who rose from poverty to palaces. The voice that thrilled millions. The man who broke hearts and had his broken in return. He made a promise to the woman who meant everything to him. He kept it, but at what cost? Now, at 85, Tom lives alone in a quiet London apartment. The silence is heavy, nearly unbearable. His days are filled with memories, and his nights with ghosts. He talks to Linda's photos every evening. Sometimes he swears he still hears her voice in the room. Her perfume bottles still sit untouched. Her clothes hang in the wardrobe, exactly where she left them. He hasn't had the heart to move a single thing. For Tom, she's not truly gone, just somewhere beyond the veil, just out of reach. He's spoken to psychics, desperate to hear something, anything, from her. He wonders, even now, if there was something he could have done to save her. He questions the years he spent touring, the long nights she spent alone, the pain she must have carried quietly while the world only ever saw him. Fame and fortune couldn't save Linda, and they can't fill the space she left behind. Physically, Tom is feeling the weight of time. 2 hip replacements, a collapse on stage in Budapest in 2022. He often performs seated now, leaning on a cane to walk, but refuses to quit. "Time off would be death for me," he once said, and he meant it. In 2023 alone, he performed over 50 shows. Not because he needs the money, but because the stage is the only place where the loneliness lifts, even for a moment. Every song is a prayer. Every performance is a conversation with her. He's no longer singing to crowds. He's singing to Linda. And maybe, just maybe, in those final crescendos, in those thunderous silences between applause, she's singing back. So he sings, because it's all he knows, because it's all he has left. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, Linda is still listening.